Okay, so what are your options for recording bass in the studio? I often get asked by bass players, should I bring an amp to the session? I've just got my bass, do I need an amp as well? Well, the answer is yes and no. If you've got an amp that you've been using for a while and you've got it set up sounding the way you like it, you should definitely bring that. That's your sound. We'll mic it up and DI as well. On the other hand, if you don't have a bass amp, you don't need to bring one. We will still DI the bass and maybe use a bass amp simulator. Another option is to use the bass amps that might be available at the studio. Or maybe your bass amp is nothing special, just a workhorse amp. The studio might have a better option for you to use. So the options for bass are using a DI straight out of the bass, which captures the sound of the bass, its pickups, and the articulation of the fingers on the strings. And then there's a DI out of the bass amp itself, which captures the electronics of the bass amp. Maybe it has a good sound, maybe it's a valve amp. And then there's the option of one or more microphones on the bass amp speakers themselves, which captures the sound of the speakers, which will be shaped by the frequency of the speakers, the microphones, and where the engineer chooses to place it. There could be multiple speakers, multiple DIs in different places. The final sound could be a combination of all of these and more. But the most common scenario is a DI on the bass and one or more microphones on the bass amp speakers. Bass strings are expensive, but they definitely make a massive difference to the tone. Even if you're one of those bass players who has a rolled off tone and all the treble is rolled off, you're just using a deep bassy sound, new strings still make a difference to the vitality and warmth of the sound. Even if all the top end is not there, it doesn't matter. It's still worth having new strings. If you're a double bassist or acoustic bassist, the options are there for placing a microphone in front of it, which is going to give it the most natural sound, similar to what we hear when we are in the room with the instrument. But a lot of double bassists have pickups in them of various different types and various different positions within the bass. Double bass is a very quiet instrument despite its size, and recording an acoustic double bass next to a drum kit is almost next to impossible without getting a lot of spill in the double bass microphone. So a pickup can really help in these situations. But a pickup doesn't always sound as natural as a microphone. So that's when we can work out ways of putting you in a separate room or overdubbing separately. You might be able to do a guide part with the other musicians and then going back and overdubbing your acoustic bass with no spill. Your engineer can guide you through this process to work out what's best for your situation. There's a minefield of choices there, and if you're not sure what's for you, perhaps look at some of the artists that you admire. See how they're doing their bass sound. The information is probably there somewhere on the internet, so do some research to find out what they've done.